When I look back at the 2022 season for the New York Giants, I go back to that week 1 matchup against the Titans. And everything that happened the rest of the year, I think the tone was set right there in Brian Daboll's first game as head coach. They score a touchdown late, and they go for 2. They go for the win, and it's successful. They beat the Titans. Like, it was just something about that play call. There was just something about that decision, that moment, that just turned around the Giants' mindset. I think a lot of people were assuming Daboll's good, this team still stinks. And they didn't stink last year. They weren't great, but they didn't stink. And you can certainly see like the change in program, the change in leadership, and the difference that it makes, like the anti-Joe Judge. Like Daboll's actually good at what he does. Because this Giants team finished 9-7-1, and then on top of that, won a road playoff game against a 13-win Vikings team before kind of getting shit kicked in the divisional round by the Eagles. So if you're talking about, you hire a new head coach and you win several more games of the previous season, make the playoffs, win a playoff game, you typically would take that and say that's a success. I don't fundamentally disagree with that. However, I worry very much for the Giants' sake that 2022 was a bad thing to happen for them because it could have created a false sense of security and a false sense of belief in something that just doesn't exist. And that is that belief that Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes, is a big-time NFL quarterback. Like, they have to know that he's an average NFL starter at best. And instead of taking 2022 with a grain of salt and saying, hey, you know what, maybe let's just franchise Danny Dimes, instead, they go on and give him a big contract, so they're tied to him for the next couple of years and a pretty big cap hit, and you got to say, is that really smart? Is that really worth it? I don't know about all that. And then you have the drama that plays out with Saquon Barkley getting tagged, and then like, is he going to be there? Is he not? Are they going to give him a long-term deal, or are they not? And, Saquon Barkley's now going to be back for 2023. So it's interesting to see this team look at that season and think that they could do much more with this core, kind of how it's built, and with the key players in the key spots. Bold to me, to say the least. But one thing I will give the Giants is that Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, they are aggressive. They'll go out there and get their talent. They traded a third-round pick to bring in Darren Waller. Darren Waller's had 2 really great seasons in the NFL and a bunch of... But if you get another great season out of him, man, that offense is even more interesting, right? They brought in Jamison Crowder and Paris Campbell to bring some depth to that offense, and specifically that receiving crew that needed it. They needed help at linebacker. They go sign Okiriki away from the Colts. That was a pretty good signing. They needed some more depth on the defensive line. Go out and sign Raheem Nunez-Roches, and that's a guy that's played in Tampa Bay the past few years, can provide you some more. Oruwariye's adding some depth to the secondary. So they went out and they brought in some pieces because they knew that this roster could only have so many holes covered by Brian Daboll's greatness. And then you look at this draft for them, and I really like what they did in the 3 rounds. They got Deonte Banks in round 1. He's got CB1 outside corner upside for a team that badly needed it. Round 2, they get John Michael Schmitz, the center from Minnesota, and you feel like he's their 8 to 10 year starter inside. I really wish my Bears would have drafted him, frankly. But this is a team, now they're looking and they're saying, okay, Andrew Thomas on the left side, we're good there. Hope to God Evan Neal's good on the right side. And then you got John Michael Schmitz in the middle. You got 3 pretty nice foundational pieces of an offensive line. And then Jalen Hyatt in round 3. Like, that type of talent with that type of speed at that point in the draft has to feel like a steal, right? And he's a guy that could get some opportunities here and could end up by the end of the season being a top 2 or 3 weapon in the passing game for Danny Jones. Really could be. So let's take a look. What do I like about this team most? First and foremost, it starts with the head coach, Brian Daboll. He's phenomenal. Like, he's a great play caller. He knows how to get the most out of Danny Dimes. He knows how to get the most out of Saquon Barkley. He knows how to get the most out of the talent that he has to work with on offense. He's got a solid coaching staff. You could tell these guys play hard. They're prepared. Like, it all starts with him for the Giants. And then you look defensively at the defensive line, and Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams is a hell of a combo on the defensive line. They really are. A'Shawn Robinson, I guess, is solid. But those two guys can be impact players, can be difference makers. And, they're really good up front, which helps out the rest of that defense, which can be a bit vulnerable. And then you look at Saquon Barkley. What they do offensively is ultimately built around him. He is the straw that stirs the drink. He is the foundational bedrock. He is the everything to their offense. If they don't have him, they're not good. If they do have him, they can be good. So you got to keep him healthy this year, right? And hope he produces like he did last year. Several question marks to me, though, with this Giants team. The receiving core. Let's name them off here. Isaiah Hodgins, Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, Paris Campbell, Jalen Hyatt are probably your top 5 wide receivers. Do any of those guys inspire a ton of confidence in you? No, they don't, right? Like Wan'Dale Robinson was a second-round pick by this front office, so we'll see what he does in year 2. Jalen Hyatt's a third-round pick. Paris Campbell failed second-round pick for the Colts. Darius Slayton was the former fifth-round pick. Isaiah Hodgins was like a free waiver player, free agent acquisition in the middle of last year. Like, if you want Danny Dimes to do well, it feels like you're doing him a disservice by trotting this out there as his receiving core to throw to. And then I look at that secondary and I say, yes, they added Banks, but I still don't think this is a great unit, in my opinion. And if they don't get to the quarterback, like Thibodeau and Ojulari can't get home off the edge, that secondary is going to have some problems in 2023. But it really comes down to Danny Dimes. And the amount of money they're paying him, relative to how much a percentage of the total salary cap space he takes, like, he certainly had his best season in the NFL in 2022, but that really isn't saying that much. Like, you need him to be better than average. And right now, he is just an average quarterback. And can he really be anything other than average? If he could be anything other than average, like, this team starts to look a little bit better and a little scarier. But if it's the Danny Dimes we saw in 2022, this is not a team that you worry about too much. It's not a team that you're going to take incredibly seriously. They're going to be coached well. They're going to play hard. They're going to compete. But at the end of the day, you don't really feel like they're a threat. So when we look at the Giants' schedule for this year, Week 1 hosting Dallas, it would really behoove them to be able to get that win against the Cowboys on Week 1. Because as you go to like weeks 3 through 6, they got to go to San Francisco. They host Seattle, got to go to Miami, then go to Buffalo. You got 4 pretty tough games, 3 of them on the road. Like, that feels like the type of thing that if you don't beat the Cowboys in Week 1 and maybe you win in Week 2, you're 1-1, but now you go through the next 4 weeks and you go like 1-3, or maybe even 2-0-4. Now all of a sudden you're staring down the barrel of a 2-4 or a 1-5 start. And the reality is I just don't think the Giants will have enough this time to overcome that. And that's even before they have to play the Eagles later in the year in Week 16 and Week 18. I think the glass slipper is going to come off of the Giants a little bit this year. You got the Cowboys and the Eagles. They're just better teams in that division, in my opinion. In 2022, as much as you could point to and say that was a good thing for the Giants, like they made progress, it just feels like it's a team due for a little bit of regression in 2023. So I think they're going to finish third in this division and probably win like 7 games. 8 wins, certainly not out of the realm of possibility, but I wouldn't count on any more than that at this point.